Okay, this is fun. We're seeing, I feel like we have a lot of these types of stories every week. Good news between Sundays. And more, we're seeing more and more public professions of like Christian faith. And I feel like we have seen in the last 5, maybe even 10 years. This one, the Jonas Brothers just performed with Switchfoot, John Foreman, the guy, to make
Come
all
on
your
now.
2008 dreams come true. Oh, come on, baby.
There it is.
You lost yourself somewhere we live inside. Somewhere we live inside. You were meant to live
man.
for so much more. Oh, that was the first CD I owned. My sister handed me that CD while we were being homeschooled in rural Minnesota. John
You know
Foreman.
what? That album still holds up, by the way.
Still holds
up. Has not it has aged great. Yeah, it takes me back to being like 12, running around kids' church after service, playing on the Nintendo Wii with my friends. That's what it reminds me of. And it's blaring in the thing because, remember when we had that stage where like youth group and like kids' church and stuff, it was kind of like a club a little bit. Like we just wanted to play music all the time for some reason.
It was music and then like BMX bike highlights. Like,
Yes.
And none of us had ever ridden a BMX bike, but it was just like guys kick flipping on screens, Yeah. And like,
We did that. For us, it was Gospel Bill. Gospel Bill always played in the background, footage of that. So like little shootouts,
bro,
stuff like that.
I update the meeting I was on right before this.
Yeah.
Dude knows Nicodemus.
Oh, come on now. Yeah, there's some lore there. Nicodemus started a church at one point.
I know. We got to get Nicodemus on the show.
Oh, duh. Let's do that tomorrow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you were saying though, you guys were bumping in the club.
They were bumping in the club, playing Wii Sports. It was the coolest thing ever. You were waiting to see if the girl you liked came to church that week.
Amen.
It was great. Switchfoot's on in the background. We were meant to live for so much more. And it's just like, it's crazy. And then the Jonas Brothers, I wasn't aware that my brother told me the other day that they're Christian. And I was like, I didn't know that. I don't know what that means really. That's kind of a thing now. Everybody says they're Christian. And so I'm kind of like, I hate to be like that, but I'm a little bit, when people tell me they're Christian, I'm like, hold on. What do you mean?
Okay. Well, finish. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that's what Jordan Peterson said that he meant on Jubilee. The viral clip of Jordan Peterson not answering being Christian. Look, here, I got the clip.
Hold that.
Yeah.
It's a curious one that a lot of people want to know. Why is it that when people ask you,
I'm just saying, where else on the internet are you hearing John Foreman to Jordan Peterson to Jonas Brothers? I'm just saying.
if you're a Christian, you don't really answer it like straightforward, like, yeah, I follow Jesus Christ, I'm a Christian.
Because the question is almost always manipulative. It's not really a question. It's a veiled demand that I declare my allegiance in the manner they see fit at that moment. When people say, too, that they're a Christian,
He's going to start crying here in a
don't
second.
really know what they mean. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, right? So be careful what you claim. It's a high bar.
But you're such a good reflection of Christians. Does the Bible verse scare you when they say that they'll deny me in public, I'll deny you in front of my Father? Because you're denying them because they're trying to set you in a trap. Would you not have confidence?
Denying the questioner ownership over my tongue.
What do you classify yourself as? If Jesus came down right now,
would you be his son?
Somebody who's studying Jesus.
What do you think?
My perspective is that
What do you think?
are a God-fearing man. You're learning and you're taking what God gave you and you're teaching others. From your fruits, if I take
George Jankos has a clip with Lecrae that we should probably watch about. He's just like, yeah, dude, I love weed. So
for them, I say, this is a righteous man that's after God's heart, like David. But then your mouth will say, who says that I'm a Christian? So it does confuse me as somebody who does watch you.
Oh, look at the face.
So,
hey, shout out for George for going in though. Kinda,
yeah, it's true. George is pressing him a little bit.
That's a good answer.
Oh, that's
Here come the tears.
Yep.
It's not a Jordan Peterson clip until he cries.
Dude, he's just waiting.
Damn.
I don't know how to add to that. I'm trying to find my way, and I'm communicating with people about that voyage as clearly as I possibly can. I'm painfully public. People can draw their own conclusions. If they want a casual conclusion, I'm not interested in providing that. People think it's obvious. They ask things that, do you believe in God? And I don't answer that question because I don't know what the hell you mean by the question. There isn't a more
That's one of my favorite things he says. I don't know what the hell you mean.
difficult question.
Oh, wow.
That is the hardest question.
Tough guy.
Well, it's simple. You say yes or no. It's simple, is it? The entire religious enterprise of the human race for the multiple millennia we've been pursuing our upward aim, that's all simple. It's not simple. What does believe mean? Does it mean you go to the cross willingly? And if that's what it meant, would you say that you believe? Because that's what it means.
My last
And still doesn't say what he believes. But
He won't. He won't.
yeah, so a lot of people say Christian. Well, what do they mean by that? What you mean by that?
No, it's true. I mean, to some level, I respect him for being that way, as opposed to somebody who says they're a Christian, but they don't know what that means, and we're not even sure what they mean when they say that.
Yeah.
At least with him, he's transparent. But it's still true. We're not asking anything of Jordan Peterson. I'm not asking Jordan Peterson. It's like he's the one that comes out and talks about Christianity and like kind of became a big voice for it. There was a big era there where Jordan Peterson was like the guy. And so it's like, if you're gonna play patty cake,
Well,
you got to put your hands up.
Well, exactly. The interesting thing, though, is what's fascinating to me. What I like about his answer is that he is owning that there are massive complexities to things. Now, oftentimes people interpret somebody talking about complexity as them being morally ambiguous, and I
Right.
think that does happen, but I don't think that always happens. And I think so like, you say he was a big voice for Christianity. I wonder if he meant to be, because
Well,
we know that while he was doing that, we were at a current all-time low of pastors actually teaching the Bible. At the
Sure.
he's doing his Old Testament and New Testament studies, while churches are doing church at the movies. So who the frick do you think? Who do you think people are
Right.
look to learn the Bible from? Do you know what I mean? But did he mean to do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, when he gives his interpretations of like the New and Old Testament, it's interesting in like a philosophical sense, or like they would say like in a Jungian sense, like the way he talks about symbolism. But it's not how the church fathers interpreted the text at all. He interprets it completely. He interprets it like through the lens of psychology as opposed to through the lens of theology. But if you're going to defend Jordan Peterson, I can't think of anything in the recent history that is immoral glaringly. He may be living as a cultural Christian, and maybe he takes, it's kind of like some of the founding fathers were kind of that way, where they weren't really Christians, but they would like push the 10 Commandments. And so like I'd rather have that than outright just mess, but it's still, I think people aren't going to be happy with Jordan Peterson. I think that's actually the next big thing Jordan Peterson has to cross. He has to answer that question. I think he's kind of stuck on the starting line a little bit until he fixes that. He either has to come out and say, hey, I'm not a Christian, I'm a cultural Christian, like Richard Dawkins or many of these, these big
Or
thinkers
I'm
have.
interested in Christianity from a philosophical point of view. I mean, he said
Sure.
earlier that I'm on a voyage, and he goes, and I mean, I think this clip provides a level of clarity in that he is not clear.
Right.
So then I think now the question, he said, I'm on a voyage and I'm trying to communicate it as clearly as I understand.
Mhm.
Wonder then if the question is, well, then how does Jordan Peterson see Christ? But now, in light of that, how does Christ see Jordan?
True.
The Jonas brothers, by the way, were raised Christian. They're pastors' kids. Their father was a worship pastor
PKs,
in the Assemblies of God.
one BK to another.
When they first started, they wore purity rings for abstinence. But it seems like,
They wore purity. The Jonas brothers were wearing purity rings.
yeah, Yeah, let's see. Dude, should we bring purity
I
rings
can
back?
make so many jokes, but I won't.
Dude, should we bring purity rings back?
No, purity culture destroyed the Christian marriage rate being so low, I believe is largely part to purity culture.
Look at this. There they are. They're on the
Wow.
rings. Gosh, they look feminine.
They look at these guys, they look like televangelist kids.
But
They look like Kenneth Copeland's kids.
we have to remember the era, though. This is also when Clay Aiken and Orlando Bloom were the hottest dudes, too. So we went through this weird, pretty femboy phase. Did we unknowingly go through a femboy phase in the early 2000s?
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, I mean, you go back and look the 2000s, look even at like the emo groups. They're wearing eyeliner, eyeshadow, like they're putting makeup on, even though they're not presenting themselves as like, this is before all of the alternate gender stuff and before all that. So it wasn't really in that way.
Right.
It was just like an edgy thing where they were putting on feminine attributes. Why? We'll make like 5 different arguments for why, but yeah, we kind of did there. I just think it's funny because it looks like they're about to tell me that in that picture where he's wearing the 3-piece suit, it looks like I'm about to be told to send in $1,000 seed faith offering to break the back of poverty. That's what it looks like. It looks like they're on the Mike Murdoch show. And they're like, hey, if you send in $1,000 today, it will break the back of the spirit of poverty off of your life. That's what it looks like.
Give 3% of your donation today to Ecuador.
You don't have the cash, put it on a credit card. Believe in faith. If you're not in debt, you're not in faith.
Can I tell you something I did?
What? Touch him, God.
I don't know. I wasn't gonna. No, I don't know. I didn't know
You have
finishing
to
it
now.
up publicly, but okay. I genuinely did enjoy my time at Dave Ramsey. I really did.
Sure.
Left there kind of inspired. I
love
left there.
Dave.
I left there being like, dude, I should lean into his stuff more, right?
Dude, when I was a teenager, I taught Financial Peace University at our church.
Come on, sponsor the show, Dave. We're gonna get in touch. I just have to say one act of rebellion that I did.
What's that?
I needed to buy a Lululemon jacket that was on sale for some upcoming speaking engagements. And
By the way, this is just like itinerant minister things. They're like, I needed to buy a new Lululemon jacket for some speaking. It was for some speaking engagements.
yeah,
Love that.
I
Carry on.
needed to. It was on sale. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was on sale. Dave loves that. Something just felt really naughty about buying it 6 feet from Dave Ramsey. And so
Did you put it on a credit card?
No, I paid cash.
I don't. That answer was questionable.
Okay.
I don't know.
For the first time, okay, I got naughty. PayPal always offers this pay in increments.
There it is. Klarna. CEO of Klarna. Let's go. He's paying it 4 monthly installments with 30% interest. Let's do it.
0 interest, and I didn't need to do it. I just thought it was funny doing it in Ramsey headquarters, a stone's throw from Dave.
That is funny. In your defense, that is a bit.
So I'm sorry, I'm just naughty, but I literally have been carrying. I took great notes. From Dave, and I'm not memeing. We love you guys. We'd love to come hang out with you guys. They're so close to where we live, Taylor.
They are. I drive by Ramsey Solutions
It's beautiful.
every week.
It's beautiful. Okay, more Christian Christians talking about Jesus.
Just kind of
Justin Fields,
past 6 months, to be honest with you.
Jets quarterback.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, me really getting closer to God, like
Getting closer to God.
our relationship
My relationship.
every day, and
Reading the Bible every
being
day.
real, there's some great lines, some great wisdom that
If I'm being real, there's some great lines, great wisdom. Yeah.
I didn't even know of. So I'm
Look at this guy smiling as he says it. He knows there's going to be so many girls in his DMs after he says this.
I'm able to apply it.
He knows.
But I mean, I was
He knows.
reading the Bible earlier.
The pastor's daughters are coming out.
I mean, I was
sleeping on reading the Bible.
earlier in my life, so I started earlier. So I encourage y'all to go read a little bit, starting Proverbs.
Okay, he says to start in Proverbs. Thoughts? I actually don't
Proverbs?
hate it. I actually don't hate it. It's digestible. It's tweetable.
It's definitely. I mean, like I remember when I was early in my faith, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes were books that I like to read a lot. But I think people like Proverbs because it's so practical.
Yeah.
Like it's so immediate. Like you can read Proverbs and be like, oh snap, that affects a decision I'm making this week. I don't know if Proverbs communicates the gospel really in a super effective way. I don't know if that's the best place for like
Does it introduce you to the person and lordship of Jesus?
I'm not. I mean, in some ways it does. There's a few passages in there that lightly do, but somebody who doesn't already know the person of Jesus isn't going to see it. They're not going to see that. So it's just going to be like if they were reading a self-help book or something. But I mean, better to read it than not read it. If that's where you're going to start, then great.
Yeah, I think it's great. Shout out Justin. So I mean, this begs the question: like, is Christianity mainstream now? I mean, it feels like now. Granted, algorithms are tough. I encourage everyone. If you're like a kid, maybe talk to your parents about this. But like Tim Dillon is a comedian, had this interview on CNN, and I think it's on YouTube. It's a really great illustration of how our world can be shaped by our algorithm. Meaning, like,
Right.
so I'm always questioning what's popular to me might not be popular to everyone because, but like, do you think that's what's happening with Christianity? Is it just an algorithm thing? Like you and I just see all the, but, or
No.
I feel like Rogan's had 7 Christians on in the last, 6. Is Christianity mainstream? Is that how you'd say it?
I mean, the way I'd put it, I think there's two things happening at one. There's two things happening at one time. One, I think we have more people who are eloquently and effectively spreading the gospel through the internet.
Like us.
Like us, people, and I think there's people who do it even better, definitely better than I do. But that's yeah. Well, that's happening on social media, okay, for sure. You've got great guys out there making good content. And then I also think too, I think that there's been this general sort of feeling of maybe anxiety like towards society and towards culture and towards everything that's happening in the world because there's just been so much chaos. I don't really know what else you would call it other than chaos. It's like there's all these conflicting ideas and ideologies going out into public thought at the same time. And I think to an extent, people are kind of like stuck in one place and they're like, hey, I have to change my opinion on how many genders there are, on this, on that, on this. They have to change it all the time because it's constantly adapting. And I think it just kind of puts them in this place of shock where they're like just like afraid to state their opinions. And I think that people kind of got over that and they said, hey, let's go back to default settings because everything was better when we were on default settings. And so there may not necessarily be like a devout Christian, but Western society is built upon Christianity. That's that's without a doubt. Like Christianity is the default setting of the West. And so when people want to go back to normalcy, they're like, okay, what are the 10 commandments? Let's review those again. And so that's how you get this movement of people who are cultural Christians is what they call it. Because that seems to them like more desirable than the alternative, which is just constant chaos of thought and having to redefine themselves and their positions every 6 months. So like on one hand, I think genuinely you do have more people coming to the faith, like genuinely. We have more ways to spread the gospel than ever before. And so that's happening. And then also you have this thing where people who are a little bit on middle ground and who knows how deep they really are in Christianity, but they're kind of like, hey, I want to be normal again.
Right.
I want my friends to be normal again. I want my community to be normal again. And so they kind of just like cling back to the thing that they had before.
See this.
Yeah.
Is the resurgence in at least public discourse around Christianity certainly increase in public curiosity, like you're stating, right?
Mm-hmm.
how can we tell the validity of someone's faith? You know, what we can talk about that, but what we're for sure saying is there's clearly a resurgence of interest, curiosity, understanding, and a more cultural acceptance of Christianity, um, in that major brands are not shying away from Christian themes and like the
Right.
I mean, it's also so funny, like Mel Gibson, Passion of the Christ, part 2 and 3 coming out, baby. I mean, like, it's just very interesting to watch how everything's working. We've got shows like The Chosen and House of David, which are for the first time seemingly like genuinely quality. I haven't watched either yet. I'm sorry. Am I a bad Christian? This would be a good clip. Actual Christian because I've
Needs to
never
watch
watched
House of
any
David.
of The Chosen or The House of David. Let me know. Am I a bad Christian? I'm worried. This is why I haven't watched House of David or Chosen yet. I'm worried that if I don't like it, then I'm just gonna be mad. And so I just live in this if I don't watch it, then I can just celebrate that you all like it, and then it's just a win-win. Like, is that I
Sure.
just wanna stay safe. I don't wanna be mad. I don't wanna, like I don't wanna be mad.
I don't know if people who are really into theology are like armchair theologians. I don't know if they're gonna love any dramatization of scripture because they're so acquainted with the original text. It's literally like when you've read a novel 3 times because you love it, and then 10 years later they make a movie, and the movie is totally different than what comes out. It's that sort of feeling.
The Hobbit
But,
movie.
I think you would love House of David, John. House of David is really fun, and they straight up they don't try to put it out as like a, "Hey, this is completely accurate," or a replacement to scripture. It's more just like, "Hey, this is our telling of that story," and it's like it fits in with anything else really that you see on Prime, but it doesn't. I've never felt like they were trying to give me like an ideology or something. It was always just like, "Hey, we did this because it's cool."
So let me ask
And I'm
this question. Do you think this resurgence we're seeing would be more, less, or the same had President Trump not been elected as president?
it might have actually been more because people would have then confronted. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like now I think because Trump won, there's a lot of people who have they kind of sat back in their ideology because it wasn't popular accepted, and so now they move forward. But I feel like if he wouldn't have won, people would have gotten fired up a lot more actually. Believe it or not.
It's crazy you have that take. I was expecting to, like, play off of you, and then and then we rage bait, but I genuinely was gonna say the same thing. I actually think that had President Trump not been elected, the faith resurgence would have even skyrocketed. One of
Yep.
my proofs for that is what's happening in England right now. A lot of the stats
Mhm.
around Gen Z revival and resurgence are based out of England, which I'm going to in September. What up?
We love England.
And I think it's in part because they unfortunately, from a cultural and a societal standpoint, have not really gotten any help from a conservative leader that is trying to push back against some of the just insane ideology, uh,
Right.
and I think that's why faith is on the rise. So it's interesting how, it's always a question I've thought about the ancient church. Here's another one. This would be a good separate clip too. Is Was the church stronger or weaker when Constantine legalized Christianity in ancient Rome? Was that a win? Was that a win or was it a loss? Was there actually and my quick take um is that maybe Constantine mandating and legalizing Christianity was the beginning of nominal and cultural Christianity, whereas up until that point, everyone that um, everyone that was a Christian was doing so because they were risking their lives, and there was a real, even now it's very hard for baptism. Baptism is one of the
Yeah.
things that used to mean something very differently. If you were baptized, a public declaration of your faith prior to Constantine and in a lot of parts of the world, and still today in some parts of the world, meant you were marked for death if someone found out about it. And so, yeah, when you came onto that water and you came out, that wasn't just the oldest guy in the new has come. It was like
Yeah.
this person says that that Jesus is Lord and not Caesar. So yeah, what do you think? Do you think Constantine was a W or an L? Or is it
I think Constantine was a W in the long run, because that essentially it was one of the founding things that birthed Western society. And so, like, if you really get into ideology, if you really want to find like a deep, deep root to figure out what somebody thinks, do they think Western society is good or not? If they think Western society is inherently evil, like many people who are not Christians, many people who just happen to be very progressive, normally that's in there. Like I can get in the programming and I can find, oh, they actually just don't agree with Western society as a whole.
Yeah.
So Constantine, now you can too, from a perspective of the church. Let me put it this way. I think Constantine was good for humanity and good for society. That doesn't necessarily mean good for the church, because good for the church has always thrived under pressure. Anytime persecution turns up, the church actually it's like fans the flames, because then it's like, when something is illegal, or you're under threat of death, it kind of helps your marketing a little bit. And I hate to call it marketing, but it's cool. Now it's like the edgy thing to do. And then on top of that, I think when people are actually confronted with the person of Jesus, they actually have an experience with God.
Well,
Um,
and it's it our question earlier in the show in another episode. You should go watch it. How do you know how do you know Jordan Peterson's a Christian? How do you know George Jenkins is a Christian? How do you know John Rush is a Christian? How do you know Taylor Renson's a Christian? I think that in atmospheres of persecution, it's easier to tell the proof of someone's
Yeah.
sincerity, because there's a lot to lose. When there's a lot to lose, and you're publicly saying I'm a Christian, some of my fear with current Christian influencer culture, and I don't know George, we're not out to get anyone on this show, by the way, but when I
Yeah.
first heard out about George Jankos, all of a sudden here's this Christian guy I've never heard of with several million subscribers, and he's selling Dance Like David merch. And I'm just like, dog, like what like if you if your intro to Christianity is monetary profit, that's man, I think that you should be careful with that. I'm not saying that, like, obviously you and I make our living off of things related to God and content related to
Right.
Jesus. I'm not saying,
And we can do that all the way back because of Constantine.
because of Constantine, because Paul set the precedent, a worker's worth his wage, like even Jesus is like, hey, I'm going to send you out 2 by 2. And he's like, people are going to take care of you. And if they don't receive you, then shake the dust. He's like,
Yep.
like shake the dust, like get off your feet. But I more so say that as a point to just say in moments of persecution, not only does it make it a little bit more sexy from a marketing standpoint, I think it makes it a little bit more pure.
True. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And you did see that with persecution in the early church, even during the times of like, the Colosseum, where Christians would be eaten, like family members who were supposedly Christians would go beg their other family members to renounce Christ so that they wouldn't die. But many of them would not renounce Christ. And so, that goes back to the verse that George Janko was quoting, which is what Jesus said, which is, if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before my Father in heaven, which is rough. But all of this ties into your view of eternity, because if you actually believe in eternity, losing this life isn't that steep a cost.
Yeah.
Because this isn't really, this isn't what we're living for. We're not living for now. We're living for the fruit of what we've done for God that we're going to have later. We're living for the promise. Whereas people who are trying to save their lives now, again with Jesus, he who seeks to save his life will lose it. And so I think that the church is probably smaller under persecution, at least initially, but
Well,
it's definitely more ardent.
I like what you said. I mean, it reflects City of God is this very thick, ancient
Mhm.
book from St. Augustine, and it's really good. I'm making my way through it slowly, but one of his uh, chapters, and his chapters like entire books, is the way that he frames it, is that he's standing there in Rome. He's basically like reflecting on like Rome being sacked by the Visigoths. Um, And he's essentially saying, one of the comments he makes, he goes, the Christians are at an advantage in this situation because long before the Visigoths destroyed their stuff, they had surrendered their stuff's hold on them. And so
Yeah.
it kind of makes the claim the Christians of Rome have lost nothing, even though they've lost everything, because they have a higher perspective. So I think that's very interesting. So I want to go back to something you said too, that I thought was really interesting. Let me know if this resonates with what you're saying.
Sure.
The waves of how Christianity affects culture is there are, in moments of peak acceptance
hmm
and adoption, Christianity ends up having a more meta, macro, societal, cultural, governmental, technological impact, in that it informs things at a high level as Christianity is popularized and accepted. While that's happening, though, what is more common is the breeding of substandard or even completely, fake Christians. Because in the midst of it being popular, it breeds, it makes me think of the 90s. In the 90s in America, everyone was a Christian.
Sure.
Yet no one was a Christian. You know what I mean? And that's how it felt.
True.
And then we created this, and then the culture pushed back against that. The church created the, more of this, like, going after the heart of God, real thing. But then all of a sudden we found ourselves in the 2020s and everything, where we're like, yo, I feel like people more than ever are like trying to be real Christians, but society is getting rocked right now. And so I think normally people in camps choose one or the other, but I think maybe that's just the rhythm of how God moves on the earth, is that there are times where, even in the Old Testament, there are times when Israel's on top and God does
Yeah.
great things, and the Philistines are defeated, and the tabernacle, the temple, everything's happening, man. But then
Right.
Solomon is Saul's dying, and Solomon's the kingdom of Judah and Israel get torn apart right after Solomon. But then there are moments of exile when with Daniel, and then even Joseph. But in the moments of exile, they're not on top, but God is
Yep.
within, and he's pure. So I don't know, I think that's
It's
an
the
interesting,
cycle.
yeah, it's a cycle.
It's the cycle. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. And so when Solomon, when you see Solomon's kingdom, like, for an example, to go back when we were talking about like Proverbs, like, people always attribute everything in Proverbs to Solomon. But the thing is if you read Proverbs and you read Psalms, you'll realize there's a whole lot of stuff that Solomon says that David actually said
Yep.
like 30 years prior in Psalms, which makes sense. He was his dad, so Solomon would have picked up a few things. Um, but David, was this warrior priest that essentially was like the start of the real deal, kingdom of Israel. And then Solomon, in his wisdom, elevates that, and they get the fruit of all this labor, all this stuff Israel's been doing since even before Saul's time. And what happens when things get really good is people get lackadaisical because they see all the good stuff, and so they start to think that God's not going to judge them. Like, they see all the good stuff, and they're like, "Oh, no, 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 no. We're God's chosen people. Look at all the stuff we got. Look at all the things we're doing. We've got this whole it's all good." And so then they start to like take the foot off the gas, and they usually don't figure out that that's a mistake before it's too late. And then the cycle repeats. And so now, when we're looking at the church, which is now the people of God, the cycle can repeat a little bit, but God always corrects his church. God corrects his leaders, and normally God corrects the church before he corrects the world. That's normally how it seems to go. So you can look at what's happening right now, and you can kind of I think it's, at the moment anyway, it's like things happen that spur people to God, and then when they go to God, God blesses them, and then they then move on the things that spurred them to God. And so then you get an era um of righteousness, and you get an era of good things that come as a result of God's blessing for them doing the right things. And then inevitably, because people are
Yeah,
people
it's a good way of thinking about it. You see an inordinate amount of first generation wealth high work ethic, high stewardship, high standards. But then it's also then a statistical normality that second and third generation people squander that wealth, and because
Yep.
they don't understand it. And so,
They don't know what it costs.
does that mean that because the second and third generation might squander it, that they shouldn't be provided for? No. Does that mean that by voting in politicians who might bring in a more Christian worldview into a lot of important policies
Yep.
means that we shouldn't do it because it might produce some nominal cultural Christians? No, it's the ebb and flow. And God, I think this is the other thing we have to remember. God's spirit is sovereign, and he will send the right prophets. He will send the right plagues. He will send the right powers. He's in control. He's moving things as he wants to.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, it's just very interesting.
I think too, just to add one more thing about cultural Christians, a lot of hardcore people kind of get upset about cultural Christians. But there's that passage where the disciples are coming to Jesus and they're saying, "Hey, there's some guys following us who are casting out demons in your name, but they're not one of us. They're not with us." And Jesus says, "If they're not against you, they're for you." And so I think the thing with the cultural Christians a little bit is if they're not against us, they're for us. I love cultural Christians. I would rather them not be cultural Christians. I wish they'd go a little bit harder in the paint for sure. But I'm not going to dissuade them. They're working for the church in a way.
Well, it's hard to not produce cultural Christians when you're trying to create a culture based in Christianity. I think that's what we're trying to say is there are pros and cons to both eventualities.
Yep.
And like when you try, Proverbs talks about like doing good for like following God for the good of the city, for the benefit of the
Right.
city. And the New Testament talks a lot about that. Yeah, like we need to care about society. We need to care about the things being done the right way, and knowing that when we create a culture based in Christianity, one of the downsides is that we will also produce cultural Christians, and that's just part of it. Love it.
Yep.